As a giant fan of the Legend of Zelda series, I have been very skeptical of what Nintendo's newest entry in this legendary series would turn into. Ever since its announcement in 2013, turning the Legend of Zelda into an open world game where you could go wherever you want sounded like a dream come true. But when you consider that Nintendo's never really made a proper open world game before, well, it was pretty easy to get nervous. After numerous delays, little details, and poor gameplay demos, Nintendo has finally released the long-awaited The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Playing the new Legend of Zelda game anywhere I wanted with a Nintendo Switch is an amazing experience, but this video isn't about the Switch. This is about Zelda. After beating the story and spending a total of 50 hours of the game so far, I've learned something pretty cool. Breath of the Wild is unlike any other Zelda game, and it's also unlike any open world game to date. Like every other game of the series, you play as Link, and it's your job to save Princess Zelda and the land of Hyrule. It sounds complicated, I know, but instead of containing plot points and story beats that are similar to the rest of the series, Breath of the Wild's story is very much its own. Link was the hero of Hyrule and was Princess Zelda's most trusted guard, but after Ganon forcefully takes over the castle, Link is knocked out and wakes up 100 years later and doesn't remember anything that's happened. Waking up without your memory to then explore the world isn't the most original setup for a video game, but this works really well for Breath of the Wild. It becomes enjoyable to meet characters that remember you before the apocalypse, as well as listen to villagers spread tales about the hero of time, which happens to be you. This type of setup pays off especially for longtime fans of the series, as we're exploring a new version of Hyrule that still contains the same locations and characters that we remember from a long time ago, but it all feels new. The game does a terrific job telling this kind of story in an open setting, which is a hard task to accomplish. The story does not falter because of its open world, which unfortunately happens with many open world games. And while I love Breath of the Wild's version of Zelda, I have never resonated with Link in any Zelda before as much as I had in Breath of the Wild. There's something so relatable about him from a player's perspective. You share his determination to save the land of Hyrule and Zelda. You want to help these villagers with their problems and make their day just like Link does. Breath of the Wild's interpretation of Link is by far my favorite of the entire series, and quite frankly, I love the majority of the characters in Breath of the Wild. There were a couple characters that I was surprisingly attached to, but almost every character has their own distinct personality that was a joy to discover. Visually, Breath of the Wild is a pretty game. The art style is a mixture of the magical bright colors of Skyward Sword with the tone and believability of Twilight Princess. And although it didn't captivate me as much as Skyward Sword or Wind Waker's visuals did because of the many muted colors in this game, Breath of the Wild is still a beautiful game to look at. The way the trees and grass move and the way the sunlight reflects off them, to the many dense towns that are bustling with life, to the way the weather interacts with the world, and to the wonderful personalities that are bursting out of these characters because of their visuals. But because the world is so big and that there is so much of it to explore, the visual fidelity and the intentional graphical details don't stand out as much compared to other Zelda games, but Breath of the Wild truly shines with the scope of its open world. Sure, there are many bland textures and muted colors, but taking in the giant views of the world you're able to explore shows off a different kind of beauty. This is less about the minuscule details and polished visuals, and more about the beauty of knowing that anything you see is explorable, which make these giant views of the world much more enjoyable and breathtaking. I was surprised with the amount of varied locations that all have their own distinct visual style, but the game does falter when it comes to its technical performance. During very specific moments of the game, mostly taking place in densely packed forests or insane combat set pieces, the frame rate does take enough of a hit to become immediately noticeable. And yes, this did happen more often in TV mode than in portable mode. But luckily, this didn't happen often enough to become a serious issue. However, the draw distance isn't that great. This is a problem because, for example, you're looking in the distance for a safe place to travel to, only for a dozen of monsters to be there, all because the game couldn't render them when you look through your binoculars. But the rest of the game's presentation is pretty solid. When compared to the rest of the series, this is very much a different Zelda game. The open world format of the game is not a gimmick. This isn't just a more open version of Zelda. Breath of the Wild is the definition of an open world game, where you can run off in any direction and tackle the world however you see fit. And damn, this world is huge! You'll spend the first few hours in a giant section of the world called the Great Plateau. Once you're done here and unlock the paraglider, you are then given complete freedom of the entire world. You could go off in whichever direction you want, go to as many locations as possible, talk to every NPC in the game, tackle the dungeons and bosses in any order, and climb literally every mountain in the game. The fact that you could climb literally almost any surface imaginable changes everything. Breath of the Wild gives you little to no restrictions when it comes to taking on the world. climb anything, go anywhere, fight anything in any order you choose. The world of Hyrule is a giant playground. There are large stretches of empty land to the point where you may think that there is a lot of unnecessary empty space that feels wasted, but these big empty areas actually serve the game in many ways, from letting you roam the world without distracting you every 15 seconds, and it also makes those discoveries and secrets you find feel much more rewarding and special. Breath of the Wild is one of those few games that make the simple act of exploring a game world fun. But it does feel like there are many things Nintendo throws in your way simply to frustrate you for no reason. First of all, rain. Rain is fucking cancer. It's not just a pretty visual effect, it is one of the toughest enemies you'll come up against in Breath of the Wild, and for absolutely terrible reasons. When it rains, you can't climb. There are many, and I mean many, locations in Breath of the Wild that are only accessible by climbing, and there will be many scenarios in which the only way to proceed is to climb. But once it starts raining, you're screwed, as there are many instances where you literally can't do anything else. You can fast forward through time to make the rain pass, but you need to set up a campfire in order to do that, and you can't set up a fucking campfire because it's fucking raining. There are other inconveniences caused by weather, like lightning, sandstorms, and odd temperature levels. However, these problems keep you vigilant instead of straight up ruining the game. The other design choice that butchers the game is with all the weapons being breakable. Now, we all have our own opinions when it comes to weapon durability in games, but in Breath of the Wild, it made combat an absolutely miserable experience. Now, combat itself isn't especially innovative. It's not bad, but it's not special. Fighting enemies feels incredibly similar to how you fought enemies in Ocarina of Time. Lock on the enemy, sidestep, and hit them. Except now you can freely use your bow, which is very satisfying. Use the environment to your advantage, although this only applies to very specific scenarios, and there is also a stealth system in place, which doesn't work well and is actually terribly pointless. But outside of stealth, the enemy AI is brilliant. They'll outsmart you, outmaneuver you, attack you from all sides, and they'll even do smart things like pick up weapons just lying around the battlefield to attack you with. But anyways, let's get back to weapon durability. Weapons break within 20 to 50 hits, and you can't repair them. Once they break, they're gone forever, and there are a finite amount of powerful weapons in the game to acquire. So, not only can you now never be emotionally attached to your weapons, but they don't carry any real value to them anymore. Ooh, a giant red sword with 50 damage that has the power of fire to wipe out even the toughest enemies? Yeah, it'll get destroyed within 7 minutes of continuous use. This made every single combat scenario depressing and feel unnecessary, especially considering fighting enemies doesn't reward you in many meaningful ways, besides a bunch of monster parts and a few mediocre weapons. I did my best to avoid as many combat sections as possible simply because of the weapon durability system. I'm upset that such a simple gameplay mechanic can sour my entire experience, but unfortunately, that's just the way it is. But I'm happy to say that the rest of the game is amazing. The simple act of traversing Hyrule is a pleasure all on its own, even if riding horses surprisingly sucks. But there are many other things you need to do to get through the game, like cooking, and I am pleasantly surprised on how much fun I had cooking meals. While traversing the world, you are going to discover little rooms called shrines, which are essential to progress through the game, as completing them are the only ways to upgrade your health and your stamina. Shrines are basically mini dungeons that have you solve puzzles using the many items and powers at your disposal. These shrines can take anywhere between 5 to 30 minutes each, but the majority of them are well made and break up the pace nicely. Plus, they act as fast travel points, so, that's useful. There are 4 main dungeons that are required to beat the game, and these dungeons are most similar to dungeons found throughout the Zelda series, and unfortunately, Breath of the Wild's main dungeons are some of the worst to be found in the series. They're drab, boring, and are not satisfying puzzles to complete, and the bosses you face at the end of these dungeons are a mixed bag. Some are pretty cool, and some are boring. The most interesting and challenging bosses you'll come across are those you find randomly in your quest to explore the world. One of the most impressive things about Breath of the Wild is how the game changes over time. Unlike almost every single open world game out there, Breath of the Wild doesn't become easier and more predictable over time. Even late in the game, Breath of the Wild will continue to introduce new mechanics, dangers, and things to look out for in ways I won't spoil for you. It's truly impressive that the game is able to change itself so much over the course of such a long time. Breath of the Wild's story took me around 40 hours to complete, but your playthrough could range anywhere between 30 to 70 hours. Replay value consists of completing all the shrines, fighting all the bosses, discovering and exploring every location in the game, and completing all the side missions. To get through everything Breath of the Wild has to offer, you can spend over 100 hours and still find new things to surprise you. I may be done with the story, but I have no intention to stop playing the game. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is one of Nintendo's most impressive games to date. Instead of playing out like a traditional Zelda game, Breath of the Wild is all about player freedom and choice. It treats its players like the intelligent human beings most of us are, by letting us discover the world for ourselves with little to no hand-holding. Breath of the Wild is a textbook example of how to make an open world game fun, which makes me truly upset that the weapon durability system sours much of the experience for me. Combined with all the other little mechanics thrown in, it almost feels like Nintendo doesn't want you to enjoy their beautiful open world as much as you want to. But I fought through it, and it was absolutely worth it. This adventure is unlike any other found in gaming today, in which you are traversing this world all on your own, finding things that feel truly special. The art style is wonderful, the characters are some of the best in the series, and the excitement I get when exploring unknown portions of Hyrule is nothing short of magical. There are some major game-ruining problems, but luckily, they can't completely overshadow what this game tries to accomplish. If you ever want to just sit down and feel like a true adventurer, this is it. This is what I always imagined Zelda would eventually turn into, and I am honored to call myself a fan of such a legendary series. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild receives a 9.25 out of 10. So that's what I think of Breath of the Wild, and although I didn't rate it as high as other reviewers did, I still love this game. But let me know in the comments what you think of Breath of the Wild. I love to talk about it with you, even if you disagree with me. For more videos about the Nintendo Switch and anything gaming, then welcome to Bathroom Gamers. Thank you for watching, and stay fresh.